Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Reading Little Blue Books Out Loud while stoned. In this video, we're going to do part 6 and the final part of the first little blue book titled Not Guilty by Robert Blatchford, A Defense of the Bottom Dog, condensed with a full word by Miriam Allen DeFord. And the original Bottom Dog was written, I think, in the 1800s. This was published 1944. Copyright in 1944. So, let's see here. Yeah. Alrighty. So, without further ado, let's get started. We begin with guilty or not guilty. We are to ask whether it is true that everything a man does is the only thing he could do at that instant of his doing it. This is a very important question because if the answer is yes, all praise and all blame are undeserved. All praise and all blame. Let us take some revolting action as a test. A tramp has murdered a child in the highway, has robbed her of a few coppers, and has thrown her body into a ditch. Do you mean to say that tramp could not help doing that? Do you mean to say that he is not to blame? Do you mean to say he is not to be punished? Yes. I say all those things, and if all those things are not true, this book is not worth the paper it is printed on. The tramp has committed a murder. Man would loathe him, revile him, hang him. God would cast him into outer darkness. But I have proved that all motives and all powers, all knowledge and capacity, all acts and all words are caused by heredity and environment. I have proved that a man can be good or bad only as heredity and environment cause him to be good or bad. And I have proved these things because I have to claim that all punishments and rewards, all praise and blame are undeserved. And now, let us try this miserable tramp, our brother. The tramp has murdered a child for her money. What is his defense? I appear for the prisoner and claim that he is not responsible for his act. Cries of shame. Bosh! Lynch him. I will first of all remind the court of the reasons upon which I base my claim. Gentlemen in white ties, and a white tie rises and declaims vehemently against the immorality of the defense, talks excitedly about the floodgates of anarchy and the bulwarks of society, and is with difficulty persuaded to resume his seat. Clerical environment does not make for toleration and sweet reasonableness. I proceed to open my case. Every quality of body or mind possessed by a child at birth has been handed down to the child by its ancestors. The child could not select its ancestors, could not select its own qualities of body and mind. Therefore, the child is not to blame for any evil quality of body or mind with which it is born. Therefore, this tramp was not to blame if, at the moment of birth, his nature was prone to violence or to vice. The prisoner is a criminal. He is either a criminal born or a criminal made. If he is a born criminal, he is a victim of atavism, and ought not to be blamed but pitied. For it is not a fault, but a misfortune to be born an atavist. Had a tiger killed the child, we should have to admit that such is the tiger's nature, as it is the nature of a lark to sing. But if the prisoner is an atavist, it is his nature to be furious and cruel. We cannot, however, be sure that a man is a born criminal because he commits a murder. So great is the power of environment, for evil as well as for good, that perhaps the most innocent and humane man in this court might, by the influence of evil environment, have been made capable of an act as horrible. If the prosecution adopt the course I expect them to adopt, and claim that the unfortunate prisoner knew better, if they succeed in proving that the prisoner was well educated, carefully brought up, and never in all his life was once exposed to an evil influence, then I shall claim that such evidence proves the prisoner to be an atavist, and entitles him to a verdict of unsound mind. Because no man whose whole environment has been good would be capable of murdering a child for a few coppers unless he were an atavist or insane. On the other hand, if it should appear in the court of evidence that the prisoner was born of criminal and ignorant parents, was brought up in an atmosphere of violence and crime, was sent out, untaught or evilly taught, and undisciplined to scramble for a living, if it should be proved that he fell into bad company, that he turned thief, that he was sent to prison and branded as a felon, if it should be proved that he has been hunted by the police, flogged with the cat by warders, bullied by counsel, denounced by magistrates and judges, if it should be proved that he has been treated at every turn of his wretched career as a wild beast or pariah, if it should be proved that he has been allowed to degenerate into an ignorant, a savage, a bestial, and a drunken loafer, then I shall plead that this miserable man has been reduced to his present morose, cruel, and immoral state by evil environment, and I shall ask for a verdict in his favor. Cries of monster! Hang him! Lynch him! It is said the prisoner is an inhuman monster. He has been made a monster by a monstrous heredity. Or has he been made a monster by a monstrous environment? No man of sound heredity ever becomes a monster save by the action of an evil environment. Say the prisoner is an atavist, a man bred back to the beast, then he is entitled to be judged by the standard we apply to beasts. But if the prisoner is not an atavist or brute man, if he has been reduced to his present moral state by environment, I shall ask for some measure of compensation from the society whose unjust laws and dishonest social conditions and immoral neglect are responsible for the fact that a brother has been allowed, or rather compelled by society, to grow up an ignorant and desperate savage. The prisoner has defied the law. He has injured society, has outraged morality. Have law and morality not injured him? Has society not injured him? He has committed a terrible crime for which it is claimed that he should be punished. Who shall be punished for the crimes of the law and of society against him? There is much proper and natural sympathy expressed by the prosecution with the parents of the murdered child. Is there no sympathy with this unhappy victim of atavism or of society? This prisoner has been bred as a beast or treated as a savage until he has become a savage and a beast. Here stands a human being, poisoned, battered, and degraded beyond all human semblance. Here stands a brother man, whose soul has been murdered by inches, has been murdered by the society that now hails him here to be denounced and execrated and hanged. I hear cries of monstrous and immoral, but I do not hear any voice say false. Is there a man in the court can impeach my reasoning or disprove my facts? Is there a man in court can deny one statement I have made? Is there a man in court can break one link of the steel chain of logic I have riveted upon our metaphysicians, our moralists, our kings, our judges, and our gods? Punishment has never been just, has never been effectual. Punishment has always failed of its purpose. The greater its severity, the more abject its failure. Men cannot be made good and gentle by means of violence and wrong. The real tamers and purifiers of human hearts are love and charity and reason. You seem to think it is a noble thing to be angry with a criminal and to be angry with me for defending him, but it is always ignoble to be angry. Some of you deny this blood-stained murderer for your brother, but directly your features are distorted by passion. Directly your fury overcomes your reason. Directly you begin to shriek for his blood. Your close relationship to him appears. Reason, patience, self-control, these are lacking in the savage criminal. I look around for them in vain amongst the crowd in this court. The clergy are always amongst the first to raise the cry of immorality when one speaks against punishment as unjust or useless. Yet the clergy preach the doctrine of repentance. It is only a few weeks since the English papers printed a letter from a murderer under sentence of death, in which he spoke of meeting his relatives at the feet of Jesus. In a week from the date of his letter, he expected to be in heaven. In a month from the time when he murdered his wife, he expected to be with Jesus and to live in happiness and glory forever. This is what the prison chaplain had told him. It is what the clergy do teach. They talk of the folly and the immorality of abolishing prison and gallows, and then they offer the perpetrators of the most inhuman and terrible crimes a certainty of everlasting bliss in a sinless heaven. If it is immoral and absurd to say that all criminals are sinned against as well as sinning, if it is immoral and absurd to say that we ought not to hang a man, nor to flog, nor to imprison him, what kind of morality and wisdom lie in offering all criminals an eternity of happiness and glory? Before you are angry with me for defending the prisoner, be sure that you are not confounding the ideas of the criminal and the crime. I hate the crime as much as any man here, but I do not hate the criminal. I am not defending evil. I am defending the evildoer. Before you plume yourselves too much upon your superior morality and greater love of justice, allow me to remind you that I am asking that the world shall be moral, and not only this man. I am demanding justice for all men, and not for a few. But you think you have acted righteously and honorably when you have hanged a murderer, but you have not a thought for the inhuman social conditions that make men criminals. This prisoner is but a type of the legion, victims of a selfish and cowardly society. Every day in every country, innocent children are being poisoned and perverted by millions. Which of you has spoken a word or lifted a hand to prevent this wholesale wrong? What man of you all, who are so fierce against crime, so loud in praise of morality, has ever tried in act or speech to combat the crime and the immorality which society perpetrates, with your knowledge and consent? You who are so anxious to punish crime, what are you doing to prevent it? When I ask for a verdict in the prisoner's favor, you assume that I would set him free, assuring him that he is an injured man and that fate compelled him to act of murder. Do you think then that I would release a tiger amongst the crowd in a circus, or that I would allow a homicidal maniac to go at large in the streets of a city? It would be folly to give to this brutalized and ignorant tramp a message which hardly a man in this court is sufficiently educated and refined to understand. It would be folly to set at liberty a besotted savage. It would be unsafe. But I say to you that the prisoner is a victim of heredity and environment, that he has been debased and wronged by society, and that to punish him is unjust. A woman's voice: "The monster, kill him!" Madam, there is not a woman here can be sure that any child she bears may not be driven by society to stand some day in the dock. The criminal makes me shudder. He makes my flesh creep. My whole nature recoils from him. But I do not hate him, and I do not blame him. Which of us does not admire and honor an innocent, graceful, and charming girl? To all of us men and women, her presence is more delightful than a garden of sweet flowers. Think of some such amiable and gentle creature. Then imagine that we meet her 10 years hence, and find her a drunken harlot, wallowing in the gutter. Think of her then, so hideous, filthy, and obscene. Think of her debased, indecent, treacherous. Think of her incapable of honesty, of gratitude, of truth. Think of her sullied and broken, and so vile that she would betray her only friend for a glass of gin. Think of her well, and ask yourselves how we should feel towards her. Some of us would blame her. Some of us would pity her. Some of us would try to befriend her. But hardly one of us could endure her touch, would try to endure her touch, her speech, her gaze. She has become a horror in the light of the day. My clerical friend and I would stand before her sick and sorry and ashamed. We should be alike dismayed and shocked. We should be alike touched and repelled. But there, in that tragic moment, would appear the likeness and the difference between us. He would not understand. The unfortunate woman has been rendered physically and morally loathsome to us. So has this murderer. But that should cause us to pity and not to hate him. It should inspire us not to destroy them, but to destroy the evil conditions that have brought them, and millions as unfortunate as they, to this terrible and shameful pass. The bitterest wrong of all is the fact that these fellow creatures of ours have been degraded below the reach of our help and affection. Looking into my own heart, and recalling my experience of men and women, I must own that there is not one in 1,000 of us who might not have become a shame and a horror to our fellows, had our environment been as cruel and as hard as the environment of these from whom we shrink appalled. I cannot hate these miserables, but I cannot love them. I could not sleep in a dirty bed, nor eat a rotten peach, nor listen to a piano out of tune, nor drink after a leper or a slut, or make a friend of a sweater, i.e., a person who owns sweatshops, nor shake the hand of an assassin, nor sit at table with a filthy sot. But to drive our fellow creatures into disgrace and crime beyond redemption, and then to hate them or hang them, is that just? To loathe and punish the victims of society and never lift a hand against the wrongs that are their ruin, is that reasonable? I ask for a verdict in the prisoner's favor, but I cannot ask that he be set at liberty. We could not liberate a smallpox patient, nor a lunatic. Although the prisoner ought not to be punished, it is imperative that he be restrained. Being what he is, being what society has made him, he is not fit to be at large. We must defend ourselves against him. We must protect our children from him, even though we have failed to protect other children against society. That's the end of that chapter. Next chapter, the failure of punishment. And I'll take a hydration break. This hydration break brought to you by my friend Maddie. Hydrate, Maddie. All right, the failure of punishment. Does it do a man any good to hang him? Does it do us any good to hang him? Is any human being in the wide world edified or bettered when a man is hanged? Is it any use hanging men? That it is unjust to hang a man we have seen. But is it any use? Harrison, who wrote in the reign of Elizabeth, says of the rogues and vagabonds, the punishment that is ordained for the kind of people is very sharp, and yet it cannot restrain them from their gadding. In that day, anyone convicted on the testimony of two honest and credible witnesses of being a rogue, he is then immediately adjudged to be grievously whipped and burned through the gristle of the right ear with a hot iron of the compass of about an inch. Amongst the rogues were included actors, jugglers, fencers, minstrels, and tinkers. Harrison boasts that our laws against felons were more humane than those of the continent. Let us consider the leniency of Elizabeth's day. A woman who poisoned her husband was burnt alive. Other prisoners were boiled alive or scalded to death in seething water or lead. Heretics and witches were burnt alive. Murderers were hanged alive in chains. Harrison adds, "We have used neither of the wheel nor of the bar, as in other countries. But when willful manslaughter is perpetrated, besides hanging, the offender hath his right hand commonly stricken off, before or near the place where the act was done, after which he is led forth to the place of execution, and there put to death according to the law. For treason, men were hanged, drawn, and quartered. For felony, which was anything from highway robbery to theft of a piece of bread, men, women, and children were hanged. There were over 250 offenses for which the penalty was death. For speaking sedition against a magistrate, the offender had both his ears cut off. If a prisoner refused to plead, he was pressed to death under heavy weights." Harrison says that there is not 1 year in which 300 or 400 rogues are not eaten up by the gallows. And then he goes on to remark that so many are the idle rogues that except some better order be taken, or the laws already made be better executed, such as dwell in onlandish towns and little villages shall live, but in small safety or rest. 100 years ago, there were over 200 offenses for which the punishment was death. Boys and girls were hanged for theft. Mr. Collinson, in Facts About Floggings, says that in 1816 there were at one time over 50 prisoners in England waiting to be hanged, and that one of them was a child of tender years, which would be under 12. From the day of Sir Thomas More to the present hour, it has been claimed by wise and experienced men that punishment is not only unjust, but worse than useless. And the statistics of crime have always supported the claim. There was more crime in the 15th century when penalties were so severe than there is today. There were worse crimes. There was more brutality. The abolition of cruel punishments has diminished crime. The abolition of flogging in the Army and Navy has not injured either service. The improvement in school discipline has not lowered the moral standard of boys and girls. But it may be urged the decrease in crime and the improvement in morals are due not only to the increased leniency of punishments, they are due also to the spread of education and to the improved conditions of life. Exactly. That is my case. Decrease of punishment and increase of education have diminished crime and improved morals. Punish less and teach more. Blame less and encourage more. Hate less and love more. And you will get not a lowering, but a raising of the moral standard. Not an increase in crime, but a decrease. And the improvement will be due to alteration for the better of environment. Chance has placed me very often in positions of authority. I have been placed in charge of rough and reckless men. Soldiers, militiamen, navies, workers of all sorts. I have never found it necessary to be harsh, nor to threaten, nor to drive. I have always found that to respect men as men, to treat them fairly and quietly, and to show a little kindness now and again, has sufficed to get the best out of them. I have gone into the midst of a crowd of Irish soldiers all drunken and fighting in true Donnybrook fashion, and have got order without a hard word, without making a single prisoner. Directly they recognized me, they calmed down. Had I been a sergeant disliked by them, they'd have thrown me downstairs. I have found the wildest and the lowest amenable to reason and to kindness. One of the greatest ruffians in the regiment once spoke rudely to me in camp, and even threatened me. I was then a lance corporal, and a mere boy. I sat down and talked to the bruiser quietly for a few minutes, and from that day, he would have done anything for me. There was a blackguard in my company who once threatened to murder me. A few months later, he was taken ill in the night, and I attended to him, and probably saved his life. He never forgot it. It was but a small kindness, and he was what is generally called a scoundrel, but he showed his gratitude to me all the rest of the time I was in the army. As a child, I was brought up under strict discipline. I felt that it was a wrong method. I have spoiled my children, and they are better than I ever was. Parents beat their children for their own errors. If a father cannot gain the respect and obedience of his children, it is because he is foolish or violent or ignorant. Children, soldiers, and animals are alike in one respect. They know and respect strength and reason. Quiet manager, officer, sergeant, parent, who knows his own mind, who keeps his temper, who is not afraid, can always get discipline and order. If I thought anyone under my control or care was afraid of me, I should feel ashamed. If a master rules only by fear of punishment, he is not fit to rule at all. When those over whom we happen to be placed in authority feel that we deserve their respect, we get it. If you want to know whether a man is fit for command, put him with men who are not bound to obey him. Thus you will find the real leader of men, the man who leads with his brains. I knew a young lieutenant once, a boy of 20. He met a boy private in town and saw that he had been drinking. Had he made a prisoner of the boy, the private would have got punished for drunkenness and would have gotten drunk again. But the young officer sent for the boy the next day and said, "If I were you, Thomas, I wouldn't drink. It's a poor game, and your people would not like it." That boy was cured. That same officer, if the men were on steady on parade, would stand quiet, still, and look at them. He had clear blue eyes, and his look was not stern, it was calm and confident. It brought the whole company to attention without a word. The officer was a man, and the men knew it, and they knew it because he knew it. The boss who begins to bully is not sure of himself. Children, soldiers, workers, and animals know by instinct when the boss is not sure of himself. Those who put so much trust in blame and punishment do not understand human nature. I said in a previous section that a man could not believe a thing unless his reason told him that it was true. I say now that a man cannot help believing a thing when his reason tells him it is true. The secret of reform is to make men understand. It is time Solomon's rod followed the witch's broom. It is time the cat and the chain and the cell and the convict's dress and the oakum and the skilly and the gallows followed the rack and the thumbscrew and the faggot and the wheel. It is time the leaders of the people were taught to lead. It is time the educated and uneducated were given some real education. It is time that tyranny, cruelty, self-righteousness, superstition, and the bad conventions of an ignorant past gave place to reason, to science, to manhood. But the penal moralist will demand, if you propose to abolish blame and punishment, what do you propose to put in their place? And I answer, justice, knowledge, and reason. In fact, an improved environment. The cause of most of our social and moral troubles is ignorance. By ignorance, I do not mean illiteracy only. There are many classical scholars who are really ignorant men. No, I mean ignorance of human nature and of the essentials to a happy and wholesome human life. We cannot get rid of this most deadly form of ignorance by means of blame and punishment. There is only one way to drive out ignorance, and that is by spreading knowledge. What knowledge? Knowledge of human nature and of the essentials to a happy and wholesome life. It is bad for men to be rich and idle. It is bad for men to be ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-housed, ill-taught, unhonored, and unloved. While we have an idle rich and a hungry and ignorant poor, we cannot get rid of vice and crime. To punish the criminals we have made is unjust and useless, as useless as to pray for deliverance from plague. We must look to the drains. We must improve the environment. No man should be idle. No man should be rich. No man should be ignorant. No man destitute. Every man should have a chance to earn the essentials to a wholesome, happy, temperate, and useful life. Every child should be nourished and taught and trained. Crime, vice, disease, poverty, idleness, all these are preventable evils. That's the end of that chapter. I believe we come to the last chapter, the defense of the bottom dog. Let me check. Yep. Final chapter, the defense of the bottom dog. Friends, I write to defend the bottom dog. It is a task to stagger the stoutest heart, with nearly all the power, learning, and wealth of the world against him, with all the precedents of human history against him, with law, religion, custom, and public sentiment against him. The unfortunate victim's only hope is in the justice of his case. I would he had a better advocate, as I trust he someday will. As I am generally known as a poor man's advocate, I ask you to remember that I am not now appearing for the poor, but for the wrongdoer. There are many very poor who do no serious wrong. There are many amongst the rich, the successful, and the respectable, whose lives are evil. Yes, we are all painfully human, and under a regime of blame and punishment may count ourselves extremely lucky if we have never been found out. Do not let us stand in too great awe of our ancestors. They also trafficked and junketed in Vanity Fair. The prosecutions lay stress upon the universal custom and experience of mankind. The world has never ordered its life by rules of wisdom and understanding. It has paid more court to the rich than to the good, and more heed to the noisy than to the wise. The world has imprisoned as many honest men as rogues, has slain more innocent than guilty, has decorated more criminals than heroes, has believed 1,000 times less truth than lies. Is it not so, men and women? Does not common experience support the charge? Let us then understand each other before we go any farther. The glory of manhood and womanhood is not to have something, but to be something. Is not to get something, but to give something. Is not to rule, but to serve. The greatness of a nation does not lie in its wealth and power, but in the character of its men and women. With greatness in the people, all the rest will follow, as surely as when the greatness of the people wanes, the rest will be quickly lost. The history of all great empires tells us this. Japan is just now repeating the lesson. It is no part of my plan to flatter the world. I know you, my brothers and sisters, too well for that. There is a strong family resemblance between us. Your ancestors, too, had tails. And then, like Thoreau, I know what mean and sneaking lives many of you lead. The majority of you, indeed, are still little better than barbarians. The mass of you waste your lives and starve your souls for the sake of beads and scalps and flesh and firewater. Your heroes are too often mere prowling appetites or solemn vanities, ravenous for pudding and praise, mere tailor-made effigies to stick stars upon or feathers into, mere painted idols for ignorance to worship, embroidered serene emptiness for flunkies to bow down to, kings and things of shreds and patches. The powdered flunkies and the gingerbread coaches, the pantomime procession, the trumpery orders and fatuous titles, and are they any nobler or more sensible than the paint, the tom-toms, and the Brahman jewels of darkest Africa? And the cost. We are too prone to reckon cost and cash. We are too prone to forget that cash is but a symbol of things more precious. We bear too tamely all the bowing and kowtowing, all the fiddling and fifing, all the staring and gartering and befeathering and begemming, all the gambling and racing, the saluting and fanfaring, the marching and countermarching, all the ranking in of dividends and building up of mansions, all the sweating and racketeering, all the heartless vanity and brainless luxury and gilded vice. we should think of them more sternly. Did we count up what the cost in men and women and children, what they cost in brain and brawn and honor and love, what they cost in human souls, what they cost in bottom dogs? Descendants of barbarians and beasts, we have not yet conquered the greed and folly of our bestial and barbarous inheritance. Our nature is an unweeded garden. Our hereditary soil is rank. Talk about the trouble of bringing up children. What is that to the trouble of educating one's ancestors? Oh, the difficulty I have had with mine. My friends, you have read my statement of the case for the bottom dog. You have read the arguments I have used in support of that statement. You have read the evidence, and you have read my answers to the arguments of the other side. I claim to have proved that all human actions are ruled by hereditary and environment, that man is not responsible for his hereditary and environment, and that therefore all blame and all punishments are unjust. I claim to have proved that blame and punishment, besides being unjust, are ineffectual. I claim that the arguments which apply to hereditary and environment apply also to the soul, for since man did not create the soul, he cannot be responsible for its acts. I claim to have explained the so-called mysteries of conscience and of the dual personality, and to have proved them to be the natural action of heredity and environment. I claim to have proved that morality comes through natural evolution and not by any kind of supernatural revelation. It remains for me now to say a few words as to the wrongs suffered by my unfortunate client, and as to the necessity for so altering the laws and customs of society as to prevent the perpetuation of all this cruelty and injustice, of all this waste of human love and human beauty and human power. I cannot think of the bottom dog apart from the whole blood-stained, tear-stained tragedy of man's inhumanity to man. For the bottom dog is a child of all the ages. He plays his part in a drama, whereof the scene is laid in the Milky Way. He recalls to us the long wavering war between darkness and light, the life and death struggle of the brute to be a man, the painful, never-ceasing effort of man to understand. We cannot look back over that trampled and sanguinary field of history without a shudder. But we must look. It reaches back into the impenetrable mists of time. It reaches forward to our own thresholds, which still are wet with blood and tears, and on every rod of it, in ghastly horror, are heaped the corpses of the men, women, and children slain by the righteous in the name of justice and in the name of God. Though the gods perished, though the vein of justice veered until right became wrong and wrong right, yet the crimes continued, the horrible mistakes were repeated. The holy and the noble and cultivated, horrible mistakes were repeated. The holy and the noble and cultivated still cried for their brother's blood, still trampled the infants under their holy feet, still forced the maidens and the mothers to slavery and shame. Men and women, is it not true? From fear of ghosts and devils, and for the glory of the gods of India, of Babylon, of Egypt, of Greece, of Rome, of France, of Spain, of England, were not millions tortured and burnt and whipped and hanged and crucified? Witchcraft and heresy, idolatry, sacrifice, propitiation, divine vengeance. What seas of blood! What holocaust of crime, what long-drawn tragedies of agony and bloody sweat do these names not recall? And they were all mistakes. They were all nightmares born of ignorance and superstition. We have awakened from those nightmares. Our gods no longer lust after human blood. We know that heresy is merely difference of education, that there never was a witch. We know that all those millions wept and bled and died for nothing. that they were tortured, enslaved, degraded, and murdered by the holy through ignorance and fear and superstition. If we turn from the crimes and blunders of prophets and of priests to the laws of kings and parliaments, we find the same ignorance, the same ferocity, the same futility. I could fill a bigger book than mine with the mere catalogue of the punishments and instruments of torture invented by tyrants and land grabbers and superior persons for the protection of their privileges and their plunder and their luxury and their ease. For thousands of years, the whip, the chain, the rack, the gibbet, and the sword have been used to uphold the laws made by robbers and by idlers and by ambitious lunatics to punish the crimes of the ignorant and the weak. Men and women, is it not true? And all the agony and the blood and shame were ineffectual. And always blame and punishment bred hate and savagery and more crime. But is it different today? It is the same today. The laws today are defenses of the foolish rich against the ignorant and hungry poor. The laws today, like the laws of the past, make more criminals than they punish. The laws keep the people ignorant and poor and the rich idle and vicious. The laws today, as in the days of Isaiah, enable the rich to add field to field until the people have no room. The laws today sacrifice 1,000 innocent children to preserve one useless, lazy, unhappy, superior person. The laws today punish as a criminal the child who steals a loaf or a pair of boots, and honor as a grandee the man whose greed and folly keep the workers off the land and treble the rents in the filthy and indecent slums, where age has no reverence and toil no ease, and where shame has laid its hand upon the child's breast. If you sow tares, can you reap wheat? If you sow hate, can you reap love? If you sow wrong, can you reap right? If you teach and practice knavery, can you ask for purity and virtue? The laws were made by ignorant and dishonest men. They are administered by men ignorant and selfish. They are dishonest laws, good for neither rich nor poor, evil in their conception, evil in their enforcement, evil in their results. There need not be any such things as poverty and ignorance in the world. The earth is bounteous and yields enough and more than enough for all. Men and women, I beg of you to do all that is in your power to change the unjust laws and the uncharitable and unreasonable opinions which make the deadly environment that fosters vice and crime. For besides that the laws are unjust, that the teaching of our superior persons are untrue, that blame and punishment must fail, as they have always failed, there is the awful waste, the waste of life and love, of beauty and power that the present cruel system entails. Think of the loveliness of a good woman, the blessing of her. Think of the sweetness and joy of an innocent child, of the value and nobility of an honest man. Picture to yourself the kind of woman you would wish your daughter to be, the kind of man you would wish your son to be. Then remember what good or bad environment can make of the young. I tell you, there is hardly a battered drab, a broken pauper, a hardened thief, a hopeless drunkard, a lurking tramp, a hooligan, but who might have been an honest and useful citizen under fair conditions. Good woman, if you ever felt the thrill of a dear child's fingers on your throat or breast, think what millions of such children in our cities must become. Good men, if you honor womanhood, if you love your daughters and your wives, think of the women and the girls in the streets, in the fields, in the factories, and in the jails, and then look into your mirrors for a friend to save them. Men and women, as the little children are now, the ruffian and the harlot once were. As the ruffian and the harlot are now, millions of helpless children must become unless you give them sympathy and aid. It is no use looking for help to heaven. We must look upon the earth. It is no use asking God to help us. We must help ourselves. My friends, for the sake of good men who are better than their gods, for the sake of good women, who are the pride and glory of the world, for the sake of dear children, who are sweeter to us than the sunshine or the flowers, for the sake of the generation not yet spoiled or lost, for the sake of the nations yet unborn, in the names of justice, of reason, and truth, I ask you for a verdict of not guilty. That is the end of the final chapter of the first little big blue book, titled Not Guilty, by Robert Blanchford, A Defense of the Bottom Dog, condensed with a foreword by Miriam Allen DeFord. Thanks for listening, and join me in the next little blue book.